What's going on, guys? Zuko back with another Dragonflight video. We got Arms Warrior today. For all the people who get triggered when I drink coffee right after I say something, there's your trigger. Listen, we got Arms Warrior today in an AoE build for Mythic Plus. So I'm gonna show you the build on the dummies, and I've got some dungeon footage, just in a heroic dungeon, but it really does show you what it's capable of. First of all, look at these tier set bonuses. Frig, man, I actually love these. I'm such a simp for like shoulders that have glowy stuff coming out of them, but this is the like Vault of the Incarnates tier set for season 1. So good on Warrior. Look at how dope this is, man. It's just really good. Anyway, let's talk about this build for Arms Warrior. Weeks ago, I talked about Arms Warrior and the new talent tree, and we were excited about the possibility of a bleed build with Rend. Rend and Thunderclap, applying bleed with Blood and Thunder, and then having things like, obviously, you're going to have your Deep Wounds going, and then you're going to have your Rend bleed, and then you're going to have Thunderous Roar as well, which is over here, and you can kind of buff all those things. Like, is this possible? And it wasn't quite possible early on, and that's for 2 reasons that have now been fixed. So let's look at those reasons. Number 1, we've got Blood and Thunder got changed in an incredible, amazing thing. They just made it so Thunderclap now applies Rend. You don't have to press Rend and then Thunderclap to spread the Rend. You just have one GCD, you clap, and it applies Rend to 5 targets. Insane. Actually, not 5 targets, more than 5, sorry. Thunderclap deals more damage, costs more rage, and if you have Rend, Thunderclap affects, 5 nearby targets with it. So it is 5. It's capped at 5. But, incredible quality of life. 1 GCD does damage and applies Rend. Done. You're done. You're good to go. So that's a huge change to Blood and Thunder that really helps to enable this build. The other big one that was really holding this build back was Blood Surge. So your bleed effects have a chance to grant you 5 reach. This just wasn't working for like a long time. And now it's working. And so these 2 things combined basically have enabled this build. And I just ran this heroic dungeon and did almost 52k overall. You can see my overall down here. Almost 52k. The damage breakdown is pretty nutty. Oh, that's going to be too big. There we go. Come on. Come on. Can we get there? Sorry, guys. There we go. So Thunderous Roar damage is there. This includes Thunderous Roar's bleed. So this is why it's so high, because it does upfront damage and then it also bleeds. Look at the bleed. The bleed's 38k. So, again, I think almost every time I pressed Thunderous Roar, I had Warbreaker first, so it's doing 30% more damage, etc., etc. This is a Bladestorm build, so there is Bladestorm incorporated. Cleave is the really big one here. But our dots are really, all of our dots. This Thunderous Roar dot's doing 13% of our damage. Deep Wounds is doing 10%. Rend is almost doing 10%. So you can see there's the dot damage there. It represents about 30% of our damage, which is really, really cool. The other part of the build that isn't bleed related is the Bladestorm part of it. So you've got Bladestorm, and I have Merciless Bone Grinder. So I initially tried this build without taking Storm of Swords, which makes Whirlwind do more damage, but have a 14-second cooldown. I initially just took it with regular Whirlwind and thought this is how you're supposed to do it, because when Merciless Bone Grinder, whenever Bladestorm ends, you just press Whirlwind after Whirlwind after Whirlwind. Turns out that that's not the better way to play it. The better way to play it is to take Storm of Swords, and then you do your Bladestorm, and then you Whirlwind once, and it does a ton of extra damage with Bone Grinder. But Bone Grinder also affects Cleave, and then instead you take Cleave, and you get the cooldown on Cleave down here. So now Cleave is a 2.6-second cooldown. It does enough damage on its own. It does 7,000 physical damage. Whirlwind does 17,000 physical damage now because it's got the Storm of Steel. But basically you get the benefit of both. Instead of, you get to take the big cooldown for Whirlwind, and then you get to proc Merciless Bone Grinder mostly with Cleave. On top of that, to support the Bladestorm style, we're taking Blademaster's Torment. So if I press Avatar, I get Bladestorm, and I press Bladestorm, I get Avatar. So I get Bladestorm twice, which means I get to do this Merciless Bone Grinder business twice. Okay? Here's what it looks like on the dummies. Let's get to a little test here. So you're going to charge in. You want to pop Warbreaker. You want to get all your bleeds rolling, and then you want to go into your Bladestorm Bone Grinder build, okay? So we're going to go boom. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. Then we're going to clap for the Rend. Now we can go Bladestorm. And then we're going to go cleave into the whirlwind, into cleave. And then I should press sweeping strikes here. You want to cleave as many times as possible in that little window, because it's the thing that's getting a benefit from Bone Grinder. Here we go. This into this. This is our second Bladestorm now. This is our real Bladestorm. And then we're going to do this. Cleave into whirlwind. Into cleave. Into cleave. And then we're not going to get another cleave off in time. But there you go. That's how it works. And then we would go back into our sweeping strikes and cleaving everything. As soon as whirlwind comes off cooldown, you want to press it, because it does so much extra damage now. We have Warbreaker back. Our bleeds are almost back. Thunderous Roar. When we press Warbreaker, we get a big haste buff. That's in for the kill. I really enjoy that talent. I think it's really good. Could take Test of Might if we want to, but realistically, you don't have to. So here you go. We're settled at about 70k on 4 targets with this build. It's very, very strong, guys. It's really, really good. I really enjoy it a lot. I can't get back to my whirlwind. Here we go. Boom. There you have a Bladestorm again. And my Avatar is almost off cooldown. We do have anger management, so we're cooling down Bladestorm and Avatar. Then we would do this. And another cleave into a whirlwind. Oh, we'll do cleave first. Into a whirlwind. It does so much damage. And that's the build. I'm not going to press Avatar again. But that's the build. We were at about 70k. I just kind of fumbled it at the end. But cleave ends up being the big thing that Merciless Bone Grinder is buffing. Okay? That's what's doing a lot of the damage. There's our Ren dot. There's our Thunderous Roar dot. Whirlwind, Deep Wounds. It's all there. You can see the dots are doing tons of damage. Just on this demonstration, we had 25% plus 11. 26, basically 27% of our damage is just bleeding. We're just bleeding enemies, and it does 27% of our damage. And on top of that, we're generating crazy amounts of rage because of Blood Surge up here. All of those bleed effects are generating rage. So that's the 2 parts to this build. The bleed section and then the Bladestorm section with 2 charges of Bladestorm and getting that big, big whirlwind. And then mostly our Merciless Bone Grinder buff is going into cleave, getting extra cleave damage. So that's that. Let's look at the dungeon footage here. Let me show you what's going on. Oh, let me move this over here. Get this up. And let's get over there. So I did get into the Ruby life pools here. Get this going. Let's skip ahead. The tank went and kind of pulled crazy at the beginning here. A lot of the tanks are doing this. It's a little bit frustrating, but you just have to catch up and do your best to do your damage. So here, I'm going to pop all my cooldowns here now. Big Bladestorm rolling. I have my bleeds are all rolling. Now I can do Merciless Bone Grinder stuff, which is Cleave and Whirlwind. See, the damage just spikes. We're going up past 100k here. So this is kind of what is to be expected. I think there's a lot of classes right now that are settled around like the 100 to 150k mark in terms of their AoE damage. This was a very disjointed pull. In a higher Mythic Plus, these mobs would last longer. My bleed effects would have a longer chance to do their damage. That's why I think this build is actually particularly strong, because you get to scale these bleed effects and make them last a really long time. In Mythic Plus, the higher Mythic Plus you go, that's going to be really valuable. You'll actually get to get the full value of your bleeds, whereas sometimes these mobs die within 10 seconds, and my 15, 18-second bleeds are really not going to be getting their full value. But again, we're back up to 93k here just from this build. It's really strong, guys. I think it works really, really well. And I do think that some of the classes right now that are doing like 200 to 300k in AoE, those are going to get nerfed. And I think that even if they don't get completely nerfed and they're still doing, let's say, 180k or something on big AoE pulls like this, this works perfectly fine. It works really well. You don't need to be doing the top 180k on a perfect pull with all your enchants and your gems. And like, I don't have any of that here. I have a baseline set of gear. My item level. My item level right now is 371. I am wearing the tier set bonus, but it's 371.
Cleave and Whirlwind. Look at the damage.
And none of our gear gets scaled in here because it's a heroic dungeon, not a Mythic Plus dungeon. So just keep that kind of stuff in mind. I know sometimes, like, I just want to make sure we always keep this in mind, because sometimes it can be, people can just get a little bit, like, angsty about this stuff. It's like, well, you should be doing 200k. It's like, well, all the little factors aren't there for me to do 200k. So here's our single target damage, which is low. It is low, and I will agree with that. But once the whelplings come up here, I've saved all my cooldowns for the whelplings here. We go Colossus Smash. Look how much damage that just did. I just want to see how much damage Colossus Smash did. Give me one sec. Watch this. We've done 535k in total, 700k. That Colossus Smash just did 160,000 damage. Then we do Thunderous Roar. Now we get our bleeds going. Now we Bladestorm. Look at our damage just climb. This is truly an AoE build. It's going to suffer in single target big time. This is like fortified Mythic Plus kind of build. But it's very good, guys. Look at our damage on these whelplings. Like, we just annihilate these whelplings. It's really fun. That's the other thing about this build. It's fun to play.
God, the damage is good.
It's so fun to play this build. Like, you don't run out of resources. Because of all the bleed effects generating rage for you, you really don't run out of rage. And that's really, really cool. On top of that, all the little different combos you get to do are so much fun. Like, getting to do the big whirlwind into the cleave for the Merciless Bone Grinder stuff. Getting to press Thunderclap and put bleeds on everybody. It's just, it has the right combo of, like, fun and damage. And I think it's going to scale perfectly well into the later parts of the expansion as well. So let me skip ahead here to the next boss. We do have some decent AoE pulls here, but nothing too big. We're settled around 40 to 50k here, I think, for most of them. This is, I think, a bigger one here. We'll just take a look at this really quick. Again, after Bone Grinder's done, I'm going to press Colossus Smash into Cleave, or War Breaker, I guess, into Cleave. But again, everything dies so fast. So imagine if those mobs lasted 10 or 15 more seconds, my bleeds would have had a chance to actually get going. So here's the next boss here. This is Kothia? Kokaya Bladestorm, I think. This is a good fight for sweeping strikes, but unfortunately the tank didn't bring the ad close enough, I don't think. I think he might. It might be just close enough. So really, really good for sweeping strikes. This is like a Arms Warrior specialty here because you get to cleave that extra damage. It's like using Havoc on Destruction Warlock, so a very similar idea there. Our damage is not good, though, for sure. If you have a kind of a pure single-target boss fight, we're settled around 24k, and, you know, we are cleaving a little bit there. So I'm going to have to work on my single-target rotation a little bit, but the bottom line is it might just not be that. It might be kind of bad on single-target, but I think it does really well on AoE, so I don't think it's a really big deal. And again, I'm probably not playing it perfectly. We always have to keep that in mind. This is me trying to set up my bleeds and then get into my Bladestorm. That's just what you're always trying to do. You're always trying to set up bleeds into Bladestorm. For now, I decide to just do a sweeping strikes thing here and not press Bladestorm until the very end because he brought in a few more ads. So that's always a good decision marker that you have to make with this build is like, do I press Bladestorm here? Ideally, if you have like 3 targets, you're probably better to just do sweeping strikes. Just do sweeping strikes and get your bleeds going and do all that stuff and save Bladestorm for when you have, you know, like more than 5 targets kind of thing. So there, I got my bleeds rolling right there. I don't have the ability to press Bladestorm at all because I used it. But again, we got Warbreaker. We got bleeds rolling. We're doing 80k. I got the Whirlwind doing a lot of damage. I'm doing 100k without even pressing Bladestorm. That's how powerful these bleeds are here. So it's really good, guys. It's just really, really good. Yeah, I love it. So I go over here. We'll do the final boss here. So what do I think about Arms Warrior and Mythic Plus? I think this build works very, very well. They fixed the major problems. The Blood Surge actually generates rage for you now, which is really, really good. And then Thunderclap applies Ren to 5 targets, making it so you no longer have to waste 1 GCD and 30 rage on Ren. You can just press Thunderclap and it's over. So those 2 things have massively changed how viable this build is. I think it's very, very good in Mythic Plus. Has a couple different combos, right? You've got your bleed style with Thunderous Roar, with Rend, and with your deep wounds. You have 3 bleeds going. They're generating rage. They're doing damage. On the other side, you have double Bladestorm with Merciless Bone Grinder, and that goes into cleave damage and then big whirlwind damage. So I really love this build. It's a lot of fun to play. It generates a lot of rage. It does very well on damage. So I think it's going to be a great contender in Mythic Plus. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below about Arms Warrior in Mythic Plus. I'd love to hear from you. Until the next one, guys, I love you. Take care. We'll see you later.
There it is.